Quick recap because it's worth setting up what's coming. Last episode we went through 4 cults and 4 totally different ways they fell apart. A bioterror plot that backfired. A subway gas attack. A rattlesnake mailed to a lawyer. A group that basically packed up and left the planet on its own schedule. Today we've got 2 more. And then we're ending on something different. A group that, right now, as we're recording this, hasn't collapsed at all. Picture this. A religious group is putting its worst secrets in writing, distributing them to thousands of members across dozens of countries, and it still takes decades for the outside world to catch up. That's basically the entire story of what you're about to hear. Here's one that took decades to fall apart, mostly because it kept reinventing itself faster than the outside world could keep up. The Family International started in 1968 as the Children of God, founded by a former preacher named David Berg, who built it around a pretty standard end times message at first. Reject mainstream society, live communally, the apocalypse is coming soon. It grew fast through the 70s, especially among young people already disillusioned with, well, pretty much everything. Communes opened across dozens of countries. And for a while it looked like just another intense, isolating, but not especially unusual religious commune movement of that era. Then Berg started introducing doctrine that turned the group into something much darker, and much harder to walk back from. This is a hard one to summarize gently, so I won't try. Berg's later teachings normalized child sexual abuse within the group for years, documented extensively in the organization's own internal publications, which is part of why it eventually came apart. You can't keep something like that fully hidden when you're literally writing it down and distributing it to thousands of members across dozens of countries. Through the 80s and into the 90s, defectors started talking. Lawsuits followed. Governments in several countries opened investigations, and in some cases removed children from group custody entirely. The organization didn't collapse in one dramatic moment like some of the others we've covered. It got slowly strangled by its own paper trail, one lawsuit and one government intervention at a time, until by the 2000s it had rebranded multiple times and shrunk to a fraction of its former size, trying to distance itself from exactly what it had built. Berg himself died in 1994, never facing trial for any of it. What's different about this one is there was no single moment anyone can point to. No fire, no gas attack, no rattlesnake. Just years of accumulating legal and public pressure that a group built on secrecy simply couldn't survive once enough of that secrecy leaked out. What if I told you a cult wasn't just a cult? What if, for a while, it was also a torture site for a military dictatorship, running with the government's full knowledge and protection? That's not a hypothetical. That's exactly what you're about to hear. This next one barely gets covered in English-language true crime content, and honestly, it should get covered more, because it's one of the most disturbing entries on this list for reasons that have almost nothing to do with religion. Colonia Dignidad was founded in 1961 in rural Chile by Paul Schaefer, a former German paramedic and lay preacher who was already wanted in Germany on child abuse charges before he ever left the country. He built a closed agricultural colony, ringed with fences and watchtowers, that operated for decades as a self-sufficient, almost entirely isolated compound. Here's the part that makes this one different from everything else we've covered. Colonia Dignidad wasn't just a cult. Under Chile's military dictatorship in the 1970s, it became an actual, functioning torture and detention site used by Pinochet's secret police to interrogate and disappear political prisoners. So you've got 2 collapses happening here at the same time, really. The cult's internal control over its own members, and the external political protection that let it operate without scrutiny for so long. The political protection ended first. Once Chile's dictatorship fell in 1990 and democratic government returned, the colony lost its cover. Investigations into disappeared persons started turning up direct links to the compound. And separately, decades of documented child abuse by Schaefer himself started surfacing publicly. Abuse that had apparently been an open secret inside the colony the entire time it operated. Schaefer fled Chile in 1997 and was eventually caught in Argentina in 2005. He died in a Chilean prison in 2010. The colony itself was renamed, reorganized, and technically still exists today as a legitimate small community, though the Chilean government has spent years trying to fully account for what happened on that land under Schaefer's control. This one collapsed the way a lot of institutional cover-ups do. Not because anyone inside spoke up. Because the government protecting it eventually changed, and once that shield was gone, everything underneath it was exposed at once. We teased this one at the end of part 1 for a reason. Every group in this series has an ending. A fire, a gas attack, a rattlesnake, a government that finally changed. This one's different, because as of right now, there isn't an ending to tell you. Some people call it a religion. Some people call it a business. A lot of former members and journalists say it has every mark of a cult we've talked about in this series: the isolation, the escalating cost of belonging, the discouragement from questioning anything. Whether you'd call it one is honestly up to you. We're just going to lay out what's documented, and you can decide for yourself. The Church of Scientology was founded in 1954 by science fiction author L. Ron Hubbard, built around a self-improvement framework Hubbard called Dianetics before it expanded into a full religious and organizational structure. It has weathered decades of lawsuits, investigative journalism, and defector testimony describing forced labor, surveillance of critics, and coercive internal discipline, and it is, as of this year, still operating publicly, still recruiting. Its recruitment pipeline in 2026 doesn't look like a jungle compound or a desert ranch. It looks like free personality tests, free introductory courses, public seminars, all low-friction entry points into a system that former members and investigators describe as escalating gradually into far more expensive and far more controlling territory the deeper you go. There's also, right now, an active and genuinely serious legal case worth knowing about. Multiple former members, including a woman named Valesca Paris, are currently suing the church's leader, David Miscavige, alleging they were trafficked into forced labor as children aboard the organization's ship, the Free Winds. That case is ongoing. It hasn't been resolved. So why is this one still standing when the others in the series weren't? Scale is part of it. Money is part of it. Decades of aggressive legal defense against critics and journalists is part of it too. But if you look back across everything we've covered in both of these episodes, there's a pattern worth sitting with. The cults that collapsed did it because something outside the group finally forced the issue. A government changed. A journalist got the story out. An attack was too big to look away from. The ones that survive the longest are usually the ones that are hardest to force a reckoning on. Bigger legal teams, more resources, more decades to build institutional protection around themselves. That's not really a happy note to end on, and I'm not going to pretend it is. It's just, I think, the most honest answer to how these things actually end. Not when the people inside finally see clearly. When the people outside finally can't look away. That's it for the Cult Collapse series, at least for now. If you want more of this, exactly this, twice a week, subscribe. And if there's a case you think deserves its own deep dive, drop it in the comments.